We got some multiple free agency updates for the Toronto Blue Jays on the starting pitching front, and they need to be in on bats. They are going to be in on bats, but we're going to take a little bit of a break from that, and we're going to break down some starting pitching targets that the Blue Jays have in mind on this episode of Jays Digest, as well as some interesting news surrounding closer Jordan Romano. Will he be the closer of the Blue Jays heading into next season? Find out on this episode of Jays Digest. Welcome in, everybody, to Jays Digest. I'm your host, Peter Vryonis, alongside host Nick Gosse. And before we get into all of the free agency news, we want to let you know that this video is brought to you by Rentals.ca, who are proud supporters of Team Canada. And while they've been supporting our national team, helping them defend their home court in international competition, they've also been helping thousands of Canadians find their home floor all across the country. Whether you're in Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, Halifax, Moncton, Calgary, wherever you are, they got you covered.
Yeah, and the best part is their website is clean. It's super easy to use, and you can pinpoint exactly on the map where you want to move, finding all the options available in your area. So find your home court with rentals.ca. And again, check out the website in the pinned comment as well as the description. The link will be there, and it'll help us out a ton, and also help out rentals who have been supporters of us. They've been supporters of Team Canada, and they've also been supporters of you guys in helping you find the best rentals across the country. Thank you again to rentals.ca for sponsoring this video. But Peter, ton of news to go over today, and today is the day, if you're watching it on Friday, November 22nd, where the deadline tonight for non-tendering players and the tender deadline is at 6 p.m. Eastern, and a bunch of things are going to go down, and I want to actually start with that. We'll dive into a couple of reports that came out from Ken Rosenthal. There's a lot to go over in today's episode, but this dropped late last night, and the Blue Jays are considering non-tendering Jordan Romano, according to Longley Sun of the Toronto Sun. He's projected to make $7.75 million next year. It would be a bummer of an ending to what has been a great run. And Peter, it seems like, you can see multiple sources have told the Toronto Sun the Canadian closer is a strong candidate to be non-tendered, and that's, of course, at the time, for today, as you're watching this when it's uploaded, we'll know by the end of the night. We'll probably have another video for you all if that move ultimately happens tonight. But Peter, it's a bit surprising, and it seems like all signs are pointing to him being non-tendered. And again, this reporter is very reliable, and it's so close to the deadline actually happening. It seems like this is the precursor, and this is kind of the Jays front office's way of softening the blow before it happens tonight, I guess.
Yeah, and the only way that this makes sense for me is if they're trying to free up some money to get under that luxury tax for a big move that we've been talking about. And that's entirely possible. You've had Jeff Passan come out multiple times and say that the Blue Jays are going to do something big. It may not be Soto, it may be Soto, but at the end of the day, they're going to try to make a big splash in free agency. And carving out that extra $7.75 million that Jordan Romano was set to make for next season, that could be a deciding factor in terms of annual revenue for a guy that they're looking to bring in. So that is the only reason why a team like the Blue Jays would look to get rid of a reliever, an area that they desperately need some help in. And we know that Romano was not healthy last year, but when he has been on the field and when he has been pitching in the back end of games for the Blue Jays, he's been as reliable as they come around Major League Baseball. You may not love him, you may not think he's an elite closer, but the numbers tell us otherwise. And the eye test sometimes tends to fail us. The guy throws 100 with a wipeout slider. That plays. And I know we'd like to see him develop a third pitch. We've been asking for it all of these years, but sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Be careful what you wish for, because if the Blue Jays lose Romano, then that adds another thing to the to-do list of the offseason. The bullpen is arguably their biggest weakness heading into next season. And for them to compete, they need bats, absolutely, but their bullpen, as currently constructed, cannot get through the back end of a game. And all credit to Eric Swanson for gutting it through last season, and I'm sure he's going to be fine in 2025. But apart from him and Chad Green, you also lost Genesis Cabrera too. So where are you going to fill those innings? Jordan Romano was supposed to be one of those guys for you, and now he's not going to be if this ultimately does end up happening for the Blue Jays. So again, you're back to square one here with the bullpen. And sure, you need to get some bats, but the bullpen was at the top of my priority list heading into the offseason. Not necessarily getting anyone expensive, but just filling out those back end spots. And now you're going to have an extra one to fill.
Yeah, I mean, it's even if it's not depending, again, some people saw this coming, some people didn't, but Jordan Romano has been a staple in this bullpen for a long time. And if they're just going to let him go, I mean, quite frankly, I think you can make the argument that he's not worth $7.75 million next season to the Toronto Blue Jays. There's some on that side. There's some where you can make the argument where he absolutely is worth it. If they do not, if they get rid of Jordan Romano at $7.75 million, I'm going to be optimistic that they have much bigger plans going forward, because there's no world where they let this guy go if A, they don't have other big plans to make a huge signing or a trade, whatever it ends up being, and B, I mean, the bullpen's in a pretty bad spot without Jordan Romano, or with Jordan Romano, let alone without Jordan Romano. And again, he was hurt last season, so I mean, I guess the only positive I'm taking from this is that they're freeing up space, and I do genuinely believe, and we can come back to this video in a couple months' time, that they're going to make massive moves this offseason. I don't know if it's Juan Soto, but I think this team is going to look drastically different, whether that's a bunch of fairly solid players or just, Juan Soto plus something else. Something big is brewing for this team, and I don't think they do this. And it's also a bit uncharacteristic of the front office to go out and make such a big change on the team. Again, they made the defensive change and all these things before, but this almost seems like, I guess you could argue it's a safer play, but it almost seems like the less traditional, less safe play getting rid of Romano, because if you mess up this offseason, not only is it Ross Atkins' last chance, if they have a horrible bullpen, if we look halfway through the season and their bullpen is a reason they're not in the playoffs, you can look back to this move and it'll be totally their fault.
Yeah, well, they will have a horrible bullpen if they don't do something about it. And it's not even a prediction. It's fact. They had more pieces available to them last year in theory, and they were bad. They were the worst unit in baseball. So maybe there's a possibility that they bring Romano back on a long-term deal with less annual revenue in order to soften the financial blow that 7.75 million would have left on them. That's another scenario that is possible as well. Them bringing him back on a 3-year, $12 million deal, let's say. I think that works out for both the club and the player as well, because we know relievers are volatile and they struggle from year to year to keep up that consistency. But Romano has been fairly consistent when he's been healthy. He had a tough year last year, but so did everybody on the Blue Jays, apart from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Spencer Horwitz when he finally got called up. So it was a season from hell. I don't know if we could really base our judgment on players based off of that. And Romano was a crucial part to those teams that did end up going to the wild card series and flamed out, obviously. But he was a big part of those teams. He was a big reason why the Blue Jays were able to get that far in the season, and they weren't even close last year.
Nope, not close at all. And if this is the end, if this is the last day of Jordan Romano, then he had a great run coming from really nothing, and then now, at least MLB wise, and then coming up and doing great. So let us know down below what side of the fence you're on there. We'll have a resolution tonight either way, so it'll be very interesting to see that. But I want to dive into this quickly before we wrap up here. So Jim Bowden was matchmaking the top 10 MLB free agents with the team where they'd fit the best, and his favorite match is the Blue Jays and Blake Snell. Basically, the Blue Jays could struggle to attract free agent players to Toronto, given their farm system. They might be willing to overpay for a guy like Blake Snell and the Cy Young. And Ken Rosenthal also came out and said they're pursuing Burns, Blake Snell, and Max Fried. Probably have another video on a couple of the other guys. Let's focus on Blake Snell for the rest of this video here. It's a guy we haven't spoken about too much because, again, a very high risk, high reward guy. He's 31 years old, and he put up a 3.12 ERA with a 2.1 WAR last season. And again, it's in the weird stretch of, I mean, you think about a lot of the starting pitchers. I don't know if this is the guy to overpay for if you're the Toronto Blue Jays. This seems to me, if they strike out on Soto, they strike out on some of the hitters, and they need to just make a move for the sake of making a big move. They go for Blake Snell here. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, but it seems like one of the riskier options. That being said, I mean, Chris Sale, Cy Young, he had a phenomenally went 18-6, a crazy ERA, and prior to that, he was also pretty volatile, like Blake Snell. I'm not comparing apples to oranges here, but it's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, the thing with Chris Sale is that he was one of the most dominant starters in Major League Baseball before he dealt with a lot of injuries towards the end of his Red Sox tenure. So there was some consistency there to base off your assessment from that guy. And Blake Snell as well, when he's been healthy, he has dealt with some injuries, and obviously we know he got a late start to last season. He only signed on the dotted line with the Giants towards the end of spring training, so there was that as well. But he had a good season, all things considered. And when I look at all those three names, Nick, Blake Snell, Max Fried, and Corbin Burns, I honestly think Blake Snell is the most likely
I
because
agree.
he would probably be the cheapest. Max Fried has been the benchmark of consistency, as has Corbin Burns. Like those two guys are innings eaters, big not big strikeout guys in Max Fried's case, but you know that he's going to give you a lot of innings, and he's been able to stay durable throughout his MLB career. Whereas, like you said, a bit more of a wild card in the case of Blake Snell. And I don't know if he's going to want a 1 year prove it deal again. Maybe he's looking to cash in one final time, but if he wants a 3 year deal with opt outs after each season, I think that is something that the Blue Jays can do. And that might be something that he signs up for because we still got to see a bit more from him, in order for him to warrant a 7 year deal or something that takes him into his late 30s. Right now, if I'm the Blue Jays front office, I'm not comfortable giving him anything over a 3 year deal. But I don't know if he's going to sign up for that. But if anyone on that list were to sign up for a 3 year deal, in my opinion, it would be Blake Snell.
Yeah, and again, Max Fried, we know that again, there's a lot of different things that are happening, but I think Blake Snell is probably him alongside Max Fried, but I think Blake Snell is probably a bit more likely, and it'll be interesting to see ultimately what happens with the Toronto Blue Jays free. It seems like they're all in on starting pitching, dating all the way back to a couple weeks ago with the GM meetings, 3 weeks ago now, whatever it was, with Ben Nicholson-Smith. He's been saying they're pursuing starting pitching, but what I do know is that this is going to be an absolutely crazy next couple of weeks as
Yeah.
the winter meetings get underway, and of course the Juan Soto stuff. It's oddly quiet as of late. So we're going to keep you guys up to date with all of the latest news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. And thank you again to rentals.ca for sponsoring this video. And we'll see you guys later.